I don't know Congressman Hurd, but I've heard he's done a good job. We differ on certain subjects, but I've heard he's actually done a good job. It's too bad he's leaving, but really don't know him.
We first reported it here last night. Texas Congressman Will Hurd, who happens to be the only black Republican in the House, is saying he will not be running for re-election next year. Emily Cochran of the New York Times points out, quote, Mr. Hurd, who is also the only Republican to represent a district along the southwestern border, is the 6th House Republican and the 3rd Texan in the past 10 days to announce retirement. After the 2020 election, Senator Tim Scott, Republican of North Carolina, will be the only black Republican incumbent in Congress. Again, that would be both houses of Congress, all 535 members of Congress. Still with us tonight, our friends Susan Page and Jon Meacham. Susan, explain to our viewers why. Here's a guy, Will Hurd, one of 535. We last saw him during the Mueller hearing. The news kind of went by everybody else. Why was this seismic where you live and work in the Washington area?
Well, for one thing, there's the fact that it reduces the limited diversity of the Republican caucus in more than one way, in race, but also in a willingness to stand up to President Trump, because there are only a handful of House Republicans who have been willing to do that, and Will Hurd has been one of them. The other reason, he's been a highly respected figure. He's a serious legislator, respected on both sides of the aisle. The fact that he's stepping in, he's like 41 years old. It's not like he's ready to retire. The fact that he's stepping down says to Washington he doesn't think Republicans are going to regain control of the House next year, and that he is probably tired of being in a party defined by President Trump, which the person to whom all these Republican members of Congress can have to either keep their mouths shut, defend, or occasionally criticize at some risk to their futures. And I think that you see Republican members of Congress saying, this is not worth it.
Jon Meacham, the point Susan raised is exactly the one I want you to take on after I read you this. Another guest on our broadcast, Sahil Kapoor from Bloomberg, tweeted this last night, called The Future of the GOP. Will Hurd retiring. Marco Rubio lost presidential bid. Paul Ryan lost VP bid, became Speaker, quit. Scott Walker lost election. Ted Cruz lost presidential bid. Eric Cantor lost House primary. Nikki Haley writing book. Susana Martinez out of politics. So, John, back to Susan's theory that departures harden the concrete at the center, harden the notion of those who stick around become inextricably Trump Republicans.
Well, parties fundamentally change in American history when there are moments when there's not consensus about the greatest issue before the country. We most recently saw that because the Democratic Party fell apart over the Republican Party changed coalitions because of a disagreement over civil rights. We saw the rise of the Republican Party and the death of the Whigs in the 19th century because there couldn't be the parties didn't the single party didn't agree on slavery. Donald Trump is quickly becoming that kind of defining question for this party. And we've joked before, but as Freud taught us, all jokes have a certain element of truth. Donald Trump's one of the few recorded cases of a hijacker boarding a plane and the passenger side with the hijacker. And the question is, will the Republican base become so devout unto itself, so bound up that that centrist part of the puzzle is simply gone? And I think these retirements suggest that that is certainly the reality of 2020 politically. And culturally, politically, is one of the most fascinating questions facing us is what happens to the Republican Party after Trump? Does Trumpism survive despite Donald Trump having to, at some point, leave the scene? And that's something that it would take, if one were a Republican thinking about the future of the party, the people you just listed off would be the kind of folks you would want in the room, in the arena, pick your metaphor, trying to pick up these pieces and push forward. And those folks are not. Now, maybe they're going to hibernate and come back. But, I suspect they're looking at this, as Susan was just saying, they're looking at this and thinking, it's just not worth it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.